They were the heroes from the future, teenagers protecting the universe from those that would sow the seeds of chaos. Each had unique powers and abilities, and though they often had their differences, they came together to save the day as the Legion of Superheroes. Now, you can be a part of their adventures and learn the history of the future in the Legion Clubhouse.
This week on the Legion Clubhouse, there's a pocket universe, and it's not the same as a Hot Pocket.
Legion of Superheroes, Volume 3, Number 37. A Twist in Time. Published August 1987. Written by Paul Levitz with art by Greg LaRocque, Mike DeCarlo, and Arne Starr. Synopsis. History knows that Superman became a hero as an adult. So, who is Superboy?
Listen, we are in a crazy... Is it a 4-parter or only a 3-parter? I think it's a 4-parter.
Well, given the
4-parter / ongoing.
Yeah, it's a 3.5-parter for reasons that we'll get into when we start talking Superman number 8. But yeah, it's 4 individual issues crossing over from Legion of Superheroes into 2 of the Superman titles, 2 of the 3, I think.
Yeah, Superman in Action Comics. Yeah.
Yeah, 1987.
Yeah, so this is really interesting because in their attempt to figure out what's going on with time, the Legion decides, hey, maybe we should travel backwards in time to go check out our friend Smallville, and see why the adult Superman,
home of Smallboy.
Yeah, and to see why Superman didn't recognize us when Cosmic Boy went back to the 20th century. And they go back and they find Superboy, and everything seems to be fine until Superboy turns on them. And then, as is going to be played out over the next this episode and next episode, we come to find out that this is why you do not have a crisis on Infinite Earths. Because one of the biggest problems in the Byrne Superman reboot is that Superman was never Superboy in the Byrne reboot following Crisis. And 8 months later, in Superman number 8, we have to come to the grips with, well, if Superman was never Superboy, then how could the Legion of Superheroes ever exist?
And that therein is kind of the be careful what you wish for, or maybe more like the making the best of a bad situation, although this is actually making the bad situation much, much worse. Because, I mean, and I put this in today's script. I will say this without exaggeration. Right here, we are reading the beginning of the end of the Legion of Superheroes as we know it. It'll be around for another few more years, but this issue takes out the foundation of the Legion in a way that they will not recover from. There's no way to recover from.
Yeah, and so story. I think the bigger question, and this is really because the Legion of Superheroes is their own editorial group, and they're not part of the Superman editorial group. And I think it's 88 before they get a reboot. So it's another year or two before the Legion reboots, 88, 89, something like that.
The 1990 when we get the 5-year gap.
Okay.
The actual the reboot itself takes place with 0 Hour in 94, and that's when we get the Legion that you first read.
Well, not that I first read, that I really enjoyed, that I enjoyed a lot.
Your Legion.
Yeah, my Legion. Here's the thing. DC probably should not have waited until 94 for the time stream to ripple and catch up to the Legion. They probably should have made the decision that when the crisis came and we're rebooting all of the titles, Legion of Superheroes should have been one of those titles that got a reboot. And they decided not to.
I feel like the reason that they didn't was because the Legion was, and still is, now in 88, at the point in time of the issues we're reading, one of their top-selling books. I mean, it was one of the books, this and New Teen Titans really was the spearhead of the push into the bookstores. It was the direct sales market, giving us Tales of the Legion and creating that new Legion of Superheroes number 1 back in 84. I feel like, I don't feel like DC wanted to mess with their golden goose, if you will. But this particular issue, when it starts out, it doesn't feel like it's, anything weird, anything odd. It really does feel like this is a concerted attempt to build something that explains the presence of Superboy. By creating the Pocket Universe, we've basically made it possible for there to have been a Superboy and have that Superboy be part of Legion history without Superman having been that Superboy.
Yeah.
But then you also have the problem that by definition,
we just wiped the multiverse.
Exactly. This Pocket Universe is an alternate universe.
Yeah. So
by saying, we're going to have this, you've literally 2 months after the end of Crisis or whatever it is, you've literally come to a point where, we're having to recreate bits and pieces of a multiverse to try and keep what we have. And I feel like they didn't want to reboot in 86 because even with the Crisis, you didn't really see full-on reboots. I mean, the Legion talks to Superman here, and Superman talks about adventures that happened before the Crisis. Superman says, this reminds me of when XYZ happened, and they were still trying at this point to say, this is the Earth 1 Superman, just with a few changes in the time stream.
Yeah.
But even, the
whole concept of a pocket universe, I think, especially coming out of Crisis, is really kind of a weird moment where people have to sit back and go, okay, first, what's the difference between a pocket universe and a multiverse? And the answer is a pocket universe encompasses that space in the expanding universe like a bubble in your coffee or your soda pop. It's not a complete universe. It is a partial universe. And as we discover, again, it's going to be another issue or two before it actually revealed. But again, if we don't talk about Pocket Universe here, we're not going to have time to talk about anything else. It's revealed that the Time Trapper, in his attempt to control all things and to, I guess, ultimately try to control Superman or the Legion, messed with time to an extent, moving little molecules here and there until the only things that remained were the planet Krypton and the planet Earth. And that is all that he needed to give it just enough of a shove to create a pocket universe that only contained those two planets. So this is important, Matthew. The pocket universe only contained the planet Krypton and only contained the planet Earth so that, that Earth developed the Superboy that we know, this all-powerful Superboy that is faster than Superman, stronger than Superman, unfortunately susceptible to all the different crazy colored kryptonites that are out there.
Right.
And an even more shocking reveal, every time the Legion traveled back in time to visit Superboy, they were actually not traveling through time, but they were actually traveling to this pocket dimension.
Right. And in some ways, I feel like that's actually, that up to that point is really smart because we've seen the Trapper, the Time Trapper, not the Trapper Keeper or Trapper John, but we've seen the Time Trapper do stupid things. We've seen the Time Trapper be beaten in stupid ways. We've seen the Time Trapper be beaten by a baby matter eater lad who ate his time device. And so what we see is this character, we've been told for years, the Time Trapper has complete control over time. He has an iron curtain of time. And so the fact that the Time Trapper messed with these kids, and every time they tried to travel in time and mess with his domain, he, Shrek'd them and sent them off to this side reality. That's kind of cool. That kind of makes sense.
It is kind of a nice idea, except... Yep. Hey, look, everybody, it's Bob Cobb. Everybody remembers Bob Cobb, don't you? Now, remember, Bob Cobb, Superman's cousin, secretly Mon-El, susceptible to lead poisoning and trapped in the Phantasome for 1,000 years until the Legion of Superheroes in the future are able to find him an antidote and restore his life. In the main prime, now rebooted Earth is from a planet called Daxam. And yet... he and Superboy were best friends back in the day. A Superboy, which no longer exists because that pocket universe is where the Superboy is at, and yet there is no planet Daxam. how do we resolve a problem like Mon-El? And this is the problem. This is the same problem. I think a lot of people like to point when they talk about the cracks started to appear with Crisis on Infinite Earths with Hawkman. But I think really Mon-El is the reason why we have a messed up timeline. That and the fact that, according to what I read, that John Byrne was adamant about not having Superman ever be Superboy. And so his concession was, let's create this pocket universe so that you people over there in your little Legion of Superheroes comic book can still continue to have your precious little stories. And that's why we have this. So how do you explain a Bob Cobb when there was never a Daxam?
And that is difficult because if he comes from a modern post-crisis Daxam, wherever that is. And post-crisis Daxam does exist for a while, foreshadowing being your key to quality literature. But if he went back in time, or if, he got involved in this mess, so he would have had to come from the modern DC universe.
Yeah, but he never did. Remember, he is not a time traveler when we first meet Bob Cobb. He's just a guy who happened to be passing by Krypton. Yeah, and he met Jor-El, and Jor-El was like, hey, have you heard of this planet Earth? You should go check it out. And Bob Cobb was like, yeah, sure, not a problem. And so Mon-El crashes on Earth, and Superboy's like, this must be my cousin, because he's got the same Kryptonian blah, blah, blahs. And so there's no time travel involved, at least in this current timeline of anyone who's been reading Legion of Superheroes from the very beginning, which by now those people are dead because it's 1987, and they're the life expectancy...
It's been 40 years. Come on.
I mean, life expectancy in 1980s were, if you read these when you were 10, that means you were 50. That means you're more than likely dead due to some kind of chemical in your soda or cancer sticks. So,
that the life expectancy in 2024 is actually less than, never mind. Okay.
I mean, so cancer sticks and chemicals in your sodas.
You and I are both what I would like to say are
idiots,
medically adjacent. You have a medical professional in your family. And of course, I've spent a lot of time in and around medical things. My wife still works for a hospital. Here's the thing. There's a disease called diverticulosis where you create small pockets in your intestines. Your intestines create these pockets, and they think they're helping. They think they're digesting food. They think that they're coming, to help you to not feel bloated or sick or have these problems. But what happens is when you make that pocket, you also create a huge place for infection. So that pocket can be there and it can be fine for years and years and years, but eventually there may be a bacterial infection that develops inside it.
And the Crisis on Infinite Earth is most definitely the infection that has screwed up the DC universe.
The crisis is the diverticulosis, and the pocket universe is in fact the diverticulum in your colon. And Ernie Colon drew the Legion of Superheroes as recently as 2 episodes ago. So obviously this is all about the Legion. But yeah, they were trying to create, I think they were trying to create something that would just generally go hand wave. The pocket universe.
I mean, that should have been the greatest thing, except that unfortunately by the 1980s, DC has gone all in on we must maintain a continuity. And now that the continuity is screwed up, we have to reset that continuity. And I think some editorial group obviously does not want to hand wave anything, right? It would be so easy to say that the Legion of Superheroes, yes, when they traveled back in time, they actually did meet Superman, and they mistook, how old he really was. He was actually an adult. And they still thought, because of this crazy age thing that goes on with the Legion, they thought he was their age when he wasn't. And all of those adventures could have still happened with an adult Superman. Because here's the other thing. We know that adult Superman has traveled to the future to work with the Legion. Just like Batman has traveled forward to work with the Legion. It doesn't make a lot of sense to, I don't know. This is the whole concept of Pocket Universe. I don't mind it. Mind you, because it does have some elements that work. But quite honestly, as a linchpin answer to the Legion of Superheroes, It doesn't work. And as you said, I agree that this is the beginning of the end of the Legion of Superheroes.
And, normally you are the one who plays devil's advocate. I would like for a moment to play devil's advocate on behalf
I mean, I've always assumed that you were evil,
Karl.
so please go right ahead. There's always, whenever I have an argument with myself, there's a little white, pure version of me that pops up and is like, Stephen, let's think about this reasonably. And then there's a little Matthew on my other one that's like, no, don't do that. Do this.
Have you ever heard Norm Macdonald's Fantastic Four routine?
I don't think I have.
You should listen to it. It's every argument you and I have ever had. But here's the thing. There are 22 Legionnaires in this book, if you count Night Girl. Those 22 Legionnaires come from 17 different planets.
Yeah.
You've got Block of Dryad, Brainiac,
apparently
of Yod Kol.
all of them colonized through imperialism because, as we learned in just not too long ago issues, hey, if it wasn't for humans getting off this dumb ball of mud, we would never have conquered the universe and grew wings and blue skin and learned to communicate telepathically.
Put a pin in that because that'll be back by 1990. But all of these characters have this. And so if you say, I'm going to create a panacea to explain a big element of Legion backstory, I can see you not taking into account, Mon-El, or that one episode where Lightning Lass did the thing, or Phantom Girl can travel into the Phantom Zone because her power says Phantom right in it. And since they both have the Phantom keyword, they're the same thing. So when you tap the card, you get the same type of energy.
Yeah, I think it is like that a lot of the times. It's just like, what's this character's really keyword? Is. Good. Let's have that work there too. And,
in modern comics, that is absolutely true. I feel like in 88, 87, two things are true. One, there aren't as many hardcore fans in the creation of the books yet. Levitz did not grow up as a hardcore comics fan. Levitz is a writer by trade. He likes comics. He learned to love comics and writes comics very well in 1987, but he did not grow up saying, oh man, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to draw the Legion of Superheroes. Or he did not grow up like, Brian Bendis saying, someday I want to grow up and I want to handle the Legion. So I can kind of see the broad strokes approach to this being good. But here's the problem. In issue 37, we establish the pocket universe. Right. We have the pocket universe in play. We go, oh, look, it's Bob Cobb. Hi, I'm Pete Ross. My neck is 4 feet long, and Mon-El's going to pop my head right off. It's 1967 or so. Actually, wait, what? 1967. Superboy continuity is about 10 years in the past, so it would be 1977 or so. But we see these kids do their thing. They come around, the Legion's like, oh, Superboy, we're glad you're okay. We're just trying to figure this all out. And then he whips out his Phantom Zone projector, which, by the way, I don't know why it freezes them in time. But he whips out his Phantom Zone projector and goes, pew! That is the point for me where your pocket universe conceit breaks. Because the Superboy that even if you say this Superboy that we've seen for the last 40 years of Legion stories is not the man who grows up to be Superman, is not the Clark Kent that we know from all of the modern stories in the Silver and Bronze Age.
Yeah, he's not even the Superman from the Silver Age. This is somebody completely different.
Exactly. But he is the guy who was supposed to be there in 58 when the kids came back in time. And he was supposed to be the guy who was there in 66 in, the Stalag of space. He's supposed to be the man who was willing to die in the future during the Great Darkness saga, even though he's not even supposed to be there. This is supposed to be a character who explains everything that happened in the previous 40 years of Superboy interacting with the Legion stories, wherever those happened. So this is also a guy who is apparently working for the Time Trapper.
Well, and let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and kind of talk a little bit more about Pocket Universe and this version of Superboy.
If you enjoy the show, we would appreciate your support. You can find out more and become a Legion Clubhouse member at patreon.com/major spoilers.
Superman Volume 2, Number 8, Future Shock. Published August 1987. Written by John Byrne with art by John Byrne and Karl Kesel. Synopsis: the Legion meets an old friend for the very first time.
Okay, so here's the thing. If Superboy is really working for the Time Trapper, and again, we'll find out more about this in the next episode. But there was a crisis. The Time Trapper prevented the crisis from affecting it by having his Time Trapper machines working in the high school. Apparently, nobody ever goes into the gym at the high school to find this giant machine working. But he's made this bargain with Superboy that this pocket universe can live, providing that he brings the Legion to the Time Trapper. I get that. I can see Superboy just saying, the good of the many outweighs the needs of the 22. And kind of going in that direction. I think the bigger problem that we see here is, again, it brings up so many questions about, so if I read the Superman adventure where Superman goes forward for the Great Darkness Saga or whatever, is that this Superboy? Is it a Superboy that never existed? Which version is this? And we're supposed to believe through the magic of hand waving that this pocket universe contains all this. But then we've got Bob Cobb, and we've got a bunch of other problems that will never be addressed, unfortunately.
Right. We've got Lana. We've got the Jimmy question. We've got Pete.
Yeah, because even Pete and Lana are members of the Legion. In fact, Pete is like, soon as Bob Cobb shows up, he's like, Bob Cobb, thank God you guys are here. It's been so wonderful. I haven't seen you guys in a long time, Legion. And so, that also creates problems. So when Pete or Lana travel forward to the future, are they exiting their pocket universe and joining the mainstream? Yeah. But then, this could also really be a good hand wave for super hypnosis, right? Where when you travel back into that pocket dimension, you do forget everything about the main timeline.
Because your brain no longer works.
Yeah.
I think that the two things that the pocket universe conceit does well are maintain the power and mystique, and as you would have it, the new amping up of Time Trapper to god awful cosmic levels, and it protects Byrne's grown up Superman
who is not all powerful
parents. Right.
Yeah.
It protects Byrne's grown-up Superman with living parents who, is kind of a nice kid from Kansas. By the way, the Kansas retcon is only about 10 years old at this point.
Yeah, that first happened in the first Superman movie. Where they indicated in just really one shot. There's one shot where Pa Kent is driving the truck and you can clearly see it's Ford County, Kansas. And that's the moment where we move from Pennsylvania or Ohio to Kansas and
Delaware.
becomes a permanent part. Well, Metropolis has always been in Delaware, but historically Smallville's been all over the place, including Pennsylvania, Ohio, as the two big states. So here's the other, I guess maybe a weird thing that comes of the pocket universe is that Byrne is like, hey, how about we create this pocket universe? That'll explain everything. You guys can continue on with your Legion stuff. I can do my Superman thing. And I feel like the Legion kind of took care of their Superman problem and they kind of dismissed the pocket universe. But Byrne does not give up the pocket universe.
No, the pocket universe comes back a couple of times.
Yeah, more than a couple of times, because if I'm not mistaken, isn't so Byrne's Superman has to go into the pocket universe, which is the universe of Superboy.
Right. That is,
and has to
in Superman 20 through 22, I think.
Yeah, which is like a couple of years away, right? Like a year and a half away to kill Zod or to kill a Zod, right? So when we hear about Superman killing Zod, well, it was pocket universe Zod. It's this Zod. It's the Zod of this universe that Superman kills in the pocket universe. The other thing that oddly comes out of this, which again is one of those stupid things, is the Matrix Supergirl. And as she comes out of this pocket universe.
Yeah, the Matrix Supergirl is not exactly the pocket universe Lana Lang, but also not exactly not. I don't know. I can't remember if we go over those issues or not.
I don't know either, but I know that Lex Luthor, I mean, they're Superman books, but Lex Luthor, right, because there is no Superboy or Superman to protect this Earth after next episode, issue 590 or 591. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. After the next Legion issue, episode, issue 38, Lex Luthor is like, well, if there's nobody here to protect Earth, I will create this version of Lana with all of Lana's memories, but the power to be Supergirl or to be a super being like Superman. And so that's how we get this gooey Matrix. That just one of my least favorite things of the post-crisis.
Perfectly fine. Matrix
no, it's I don't care for it. I don't think it's interesting. But again, you always have this escape hatch for Byrne, at least, to always go back here. But I feel that, especially after next episode, where we'll go into the conclusion of this story, there's really no reason ever for the Legion to go back to Smallville.
And I think that is part of the problem. The underlying problem with the Pocket Universe is that it's solving a Legion problem in a way that doesn't in any way benefit the Legion. This is one of those why don't you and him fight situations where Byrne's Superman revamp, which, I'll grant you, Superman getting revamped was kind of DC's, premier book in 1986. It was the thing that they were trying to make the center of everything. A new Superman, a Superman who's more approachable, more realistic, a Superman who, for the first time really in history is getting a hard reboot instead of, the power creep and the power seep.
Well, we're also hitting a major milestone for Superman too, right? He's almost 50 years old at this point. And I remember in the 80s, all the big brouhaha when Superman turned 50. And so,
brouhaha.
Yeah. So, having these kind of reboots and depowering Superman and not making him fly through the sun to clean his cape or have a little pocket that he can put his clothes in on his cape. All these things go away.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I want that back.
So is there anything that is good that comes out of this 4-issue mistake of trying to make the Legion make sense? Because quite frankly, the Legion's never made sense.
Yes, there are some good things that roll out of this. The primary one we've already touched on is making the Time Trapper crazier, more powerful, more alien than we've ever seen before.
Right.
Taking that Superman situation, taking, Superboy, and what does happen with Superboy does become a pretty... going forward, it becomes a pretty big thing. And I feel like having that run, having this story and then putting it together and saying this is what happens and then kind of giving, hey, well, okay, that explains everything. We're just gonna roll with that. We do get, for a while, a really, really nice subplot in both Superman, as you mentioned, where you don't like Matrix, but that whole storyline is fascinating. And then it gets to the point where they come to the stupid decision that Byrne makes. And then the same thing happens in Legion. We do get a subplot here in Legion that eventually ends in a stupid decision. I would say that primarily this gives us John Byrne drawing the Fantastic Four in DC continuity. Because you got a Man of Stone, a genius, an invisible person, and a flaming person as the team that meets Superman in Superman number 8. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
And secondly, Byrne's block is not my favorite block, but he looks a hell of a lot better than he does under LaRocque and DeCarlo. So seeing Byrne's block attacking Superman and hitting him with enough power to knock Superman to the ground, that's kind of cool. But
I think also,
as far as
we also get because of the crisis, we get an older, modern Kent family, right? We get the Kents that are alive in the 80s. as opposed to, the decrepit septuagenarians that were alive during Superboy's era. And so I think that's something that can be a little positive. I also think that maybe this, what may have been an easier answer for all of this? Saturn Girl's powers go wrong, and they're traveling back to the past. They meet Superboy, and unfortunately, Saturn Girl's powers go so haywire that she super hypnotizes the entire Earth into thinking that there was never a Superboy. That would have been an easier solution to this whole problem.
It would, but once again, that's a solution that's Legion-oriented. And at this point, DC isn't necessarily worried, obviously, about protecting the Legion. They're worried about protecting their new high-profile Superman
their big giant IP. Here's my biggest complaint about issue number 8 is that half of the issue is telling the origin of the Legion of Superheroes. So we're actually telling the first appearance of the Legion in that Action Comics issue from, decades ago. And then not only that, Byrne spends how many pages? Like
6,
3 or 4, definitely, maybe 6 pages. I don't know how many it is. Retelling the events from the last issue, from the Legion issue.
Word for word.
Yeah.
Like just literally the same thing. And that is very frustrating to me. And to a degree, 87 is a point where you don't yet have the expectation that everything's going to be collected in a trade. So,
right. Well, and also again, 2 different editorial groups. And I could see Byrne trying to say, hey, nobody's reading the Legion because everybody's reading my stuff. Let me explain what's going on for the dummies in the back so that they're not coming in confused. But man, what a waste of half of an issue.
Yeah. The thing that gets that really, and this makes my blood boil. The thing that torques my cheese is that the Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1986 streamlines away every other reality and then goes, okay, here's this pocket universe, this diverticuli, if you will. When we get Hypertime back, the pocket universe is officially Earth 23. So what we're seeing is literally DC going, no. This is not an alternate universe. No, this is something different. This is a pocket universe. La 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 la. I can't hear you. La 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 la. And literally within 5-6 years, it's going to be an alternate universe, one of thousands of alternate universe. And the secret of 52 is the multiverse still exists.
Yeah, and it always has existed. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's what I do like about 52 is that they literally are just like shrug. I guess it was there all along and people just forgot about it. Iron Curtain of Time, or you're not supposed to look too far into the past, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think there are a couple of other kind of issues that I have with Byrne's Superboy. He doesn't look like a young kid. There are times, and again, we only get Superboy at the end of this issue, and we'll talk more about it next time. But especially looking at the cover of this issue, which one's Superboy and which one's Superman? They're basically the same character in this. They're not even trying to change, sizes or anything to make one of them bigger or smaller. It looks like the same person, and that is somewhat troubling.
Yeah, Byrne's ability to draw children and adolescents is somewhat stunted because, and it's not necessarily his fault. If you look at Byrne's style, his style has long elongated necks and long slim arms on everybody, including Block. And so when you say, hey, these adults have long slim necks and elongated slim arms, that in most cases is shorthand for
a child,
an adolescent. This is someone who's not fully grown. And so when you take that style and you're like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make their necks look longer and have them still be?
I will just make them 3/4 size.
Exactly. You're just, you shrink them down. You put them in the shrinker. Oh man, you don't have. Oh boy.
So here's what I found. This
Billy Batson in the pages of Legends is just it's a nightmare.
Here's what I found on Reddit because I was really confused as to how could this be allowed to happen. And so I don't know the names of these people. I'm just going to call them lovingly Nerd 1 and Nerd 2. Nerd 1 says, okay. Backstory. A lot of the stuff that happened to Legion of Superheroes was the fault of the Superman editorial office. The original plan was that Superboy would stay in Legion and that they would reveal that the Time Beacon shielded the Legion of Superheroes from the Crisis reboot. But editorial insisted they get rid of Superboy, hence the whole Pocket Universe arc and Superboy's death. And apparently the reboot with Glorith and Valor was, again, triggered by editorial wanting all Superboy references removed. It might also be related to the whole court drama over who owned the Silver Age Superboy. Initial thoughts and reactions
not 15 years early.
No, I mean, there's always been fighting over Superboy. I mean, there certainly was some drama, not the more recent drama where they actually killed Connor Kent because of that version. But Superboy has always kind of been up in the air. Same way with Supergirl, derivative work or original work kind of thing. But what do you think of this in the Time Beacon shielding the Legion from the Crisis reboot, which, again, would have been another thing that would make perfect sense?
That would be a possibility. I would be fine with that, especially if that put Superboy back in active duty because his past no longer exists. Mm-hmm. You're stuck in the future. Mm-hmm. But I have heard, and again, this is all, third-hand nerd stuff, that the Superman editorial office did not want Superboy to stay in Legion. I have heard that. Mm-hmm. The Glorith and Valor reboot, which we'll get to in probably another 20 episodes or so, was another situation that I have heard was related to the Superman offices, specifically Mike Carlin, wanting the Superboy references removed, because by that point, Byrne is gone from DC.
Yeah.
The court part of the drama does not start until the early 2000s. Whether or not, and I want to say in 87 that Jerry Siegel was still alive.
Yeah, because there was a whole health insurance thing that was going on at that time. Here's what Nerd 2 had to say. What's your source? Not challenging, just curious.
God, stop Redditing me. I will get out and I will turn this podcast.
When I talked with a friend that worked there at the time, presumably DC Comics, he seemed to think that the editors and writers on Legion were the ones pushing the edges to avoid a wholesale reboot of the Legion, and that the Pocket Universe was Byrne's way of resolving the situation. He seemed to think the loose overall editorial control by Dick Giordano allowed the Legion people to keep throwing in things that didn't fit in with the new continuity. He also had the thought that Byrne burning the Pocket Universe to the ground in that post-crisis story arc, I put in something else, was Byrne's way of showing his disapproval of the whole thing, but he doesn't know that for sure. I would find that very surprising if Byrne burning the Pocket Universe to the ground is Byrne saying, I don't like the Pocket Universe, because he literally created it in his comic. So I don't know. That's a little weird there. So
here's the thing. Neither of these people have friends that work in DC.
Oh no! This is a Reddit discussion. That's why I call them Nerd 1, Nerd 2, because these things happen, and you never know. There could be some truth on some of these things.
I'm not saying there isn't. I will say this, as someone who has spent time in the John Byrne forums, John Byrne as a person does have the wherewithal, does have, in my sole humble opinion, and I mean no slanderous remarks, nothing.
Well, be careful then, because when you say, I don't mean to slander anybody, so this is not a slanderous remark, tends to lead you say
be libel. No.
I'm not lead us to put all sorts of lawyers on alert.
Sure. Okay, so here's the thing. I spent some time in the John Byrne forums, and if you said to me that John Byrne killed the Pocket Universe because there was something he didn't like that had happened in another book, I would have no problem with that, because we have seen that from creators. And John especially is a creator who is absolutely not one to hide his issues and his displeasure with editorial, with other creators, whatever. As this whole Superman thing shows, the Superman to Superboy, he has a vision that he wants to do. And if it means the Legion of Superheroes has to do something crazy to fix it, that's not him, that's back there.
Yeah.
It's like my driving theory. I've never had an accident. People behind me crash into each other all the time. But I would say, having been banned from that forum just for literally saying something that I thought was interesting about a comic, I don't necessarily say that anybody would or would not have taken that Pocket Universe destruction. I will say that the question of who is to blame is going to be impossible for us to figure out 40 years later.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is that all of us have our internal biases. We've all heard the word of mouth stories and the blah, blah, blah. I think the main thing that we look at is however this works out, we're seeing that encroaching creep of, okay, you can't use Superboy. Okay, you can't reference Superboy. Okay, Superboy cannot be a part of your backstory at all. And that does lead eventually to, all right, we're just going to relaunch the whole thing. We have a Superboy analog right here on the team. You know, could they in 1986 have said Superboy never happened and Mon-El is the heart of the team?
I mean, wait 10 years and we'll find out. So
exactly.
Thank you, everyone, for checking out this week's episode of the Legion Clubhouse. Next week on the show, what happens when Superman meets Superboy and the fate of an entire pocket universe rests in everyone's hands? That's next time on the Legion Clubhouse. Check us out then. And in the meantime, go and support this show. Give us a couple of bucks, $1, $2, whatever you feel. Go over to patreon.com/Major Spoilers.
The Legion Clubhouse is a production of Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC, and is produced by Steven Schleicher. Your hosts were Matthew Peterson and Steven Schleicher. You can follow Matthew at Mighty King Cobra and Steven at Major Spoilers. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at Legion Clubhouse. If you have questions or comments, send them to podcast@majorspoilers.com. I'm Jason Inman. Until next time, eat it, Grandpa.
This podcast is copyright 2024 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.